Education, education, this is the foundation. Our rising population needs sound education to be recognized anywhere you go. Have your certificate to show, to enjoy any kind of happiness. Knowledge is the key to success. Children go to school and learn well. Otherwise later on in life you won't catch real hell. Without an education in your head, your whole life will be pure misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't allow idle companions to lead you astray. To earn tomorrow, you got to learn today. For employment, yes, employment, you must be intelligent. It's essential, very essential to have your credentials. But if you're block-headed like a mule, no one will employ a fool. You'll be the last one to be hired and the first one to be fired. Children go to school and learn well. Otherwise, later on in life, you're gonna catch real hell. Without an education in your head, your whole life will be pure misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't follow idle companions or you will get burned. To earn, you got to learn. Illiteracy is man's greatest enemy. It's your duty, yes, your duty, stamp it out completely. Ignorance always impedes progress. Education saves you much distress. So learn as much as you can. For the nation's future's in your hand. Children stay in school and learn well. Otherwise, later on in life, you're gonna catch real hell. Without an education in your head, your whole life will be pure misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't allow idle companions to lead you astray. To earn tomorrow, you got to learn today. It's a treasure, yes, a treasure beyond any measure. Just secure it, don't ever ignore it. To fight life's battles come what may. Education lights up your way. Without it, you'll never get through. Success or failure now is up to you. Children go to school and learn well. Otherwise, later on in life, you're gonna catch real hell. Without an education in your head, your whole life will be pure misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't allow idle companions to lead you astray. To earn tomorrow, you got to learn today.
Now foundation, grassroots, you got to know the truth. If you don't know where you're coming from, you don't know where to go. Love the culture, Anthony Selassie, say so.
Long ago,
Long time ago.
yes, long ago, pirates had their fun
See a book on
in
here.
the burning sun. 16 men,
16 there.
and a dead man's chest. Yo, 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 and a bottle of rum.
Summer chance.
Yo, 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 yo.
Now Henry Morgan and John Hawkins jump like a bat. They come up on the base and now them come here with them flat. But they push me down the bottom, but we rise up to the top. And now them cannot turn me back because we pull up every gap. Cut me by the belly and the money them a bet. We see what kind of baby mama she a get. Is it a king? Is it a princess? So you see me generation travel through the stress.
Yes, indeed, of course, a pleasant good night to all and sundry, East, West, North, South, Central, in Trinidad, our friends in Tobago, and wherever you are, streaming on the World Wide Web at this point in time, viewing, of course, the corridor transformation. Pleasant good day to you. Yes, indeed, we have a bumper program for you because we asked the question tonight whether or not we have done enough. And it is, of course, centered around education. But education is so vast because it is a lifelong, let's say, exercise. So it doesn't matter what age you are at this point in time or any point in time, education is never a complete, a total, because there's so much to learn in this life that even when you pass on, and we all must pass on as well, there is still much to learn, but the important thing is what you would have left so that others can benefit from it. In other words, your legacy. And we are going to look at that tonight in the context, of course, of education, in the context of the government, in the context of family, in the context of neighborhoods, in the context of communities, and in the context, of course, as our place in the hemisphere and in the world as a nation. That is where we are going tonight. But in the meantime, of course, let's get some of the old time.
Inna the burning sun, inna the rain. Me mother and me father have to chop the sugar cane. Punishment for them if them ever complain. The pressure get hard, but them still bear the pain. Lord get heavy, them a carry till them straight. Some to nobody, so them gone insane. Now them a come with them drugs and cocaine. See them want to do it all over and over again.
Yes, indeed, of course. So we cannot start a program on education without, of course, expressing that in more ways than one. But of course, the Mighty Sparrow is an exponent in that area. I expect my colleague COP to join me momentarily. But in the meantime, of course, I will take the bull by the horn, so to speak. Yes, indeed.
Have your certificate to show to enjoy any kind of happiness. Knowledge is the key to success. Children go to school and learn well. Otherwise later on in life you won't catch real hell. Without an education in your head, your whole life will be pure misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't allow idle companions to lead you astray. To earn tomorrow, you got to learn today. For employment, yes, employment, you must be intelligent. It's essential, very essential to have your credentials. But if you're block-headed like a mule, no one will employ a fool. You'll be the last one to be hired and the first one to be fired. Children go to school and learn well. Otherwise, later on in life, you're gonna catch real hell. Without an education in your head, your whole life will be pure misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't follow idle companions or you will get burned. To earn, you got to learn. Illiteracy is man's greatest enemy. It's your duty, yes, your duty, stamp it out completely. Ignorance always impedes progress. Education saves you much distress. So learn as much as you can. For the nation's future's in your hand. Children stay in school and learn well. Otherwise, later on in life, you're gonna catch real hell. Without an education in your head, your whole life will be pure misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't allow idle companions to lead you astray. To earn tomorrow, you got to learn today. It's a treasure, yes, a treasure beyond any measure. Just secure it, don't ever ignore it.
Yes, indeed, of course. Once again, as the topic suggests, that there is, of course, the whole idea of education. And I want to ask the question tonight. And those of you who wish to call in, well, we still have the same, what I consider to be primitive approach, but practical in this present circumstance. And don't forget, of course, that the numbers are on the screen. Yes, we omitted that yesterday, but I want to say that we are here. And, of course, to those persons who, and I want to thank those who have already called in to give a pledge and a commitment to a student for graduation purposes. Of course, that is separate and apart from our request later down in the coming month, where we will ask for back to school assistance, books, etc. Of course, I want to tell parents that the Ministry of Education has been offering bursaries, if you want to call it that, or assistance with respect to your book list. books that you'll have to get, whether it's primary or secondary school, whether you're now entering either of them or you are still in either of them. I think that would end on the 6th of this month, the applications. I'm going to, tomorrow, for example, I am going to post up the application forms and what you have to do. I know that many of you may not be familiar with or connected, or it may well be inconvenient for you to come here at the resource center, the MLIO resource center, to get assistance, computerized and so on. But certainly the details that we will give you tomorrow night will certainly, I hope, will assist in how you will get there, because one of the important things about knowledge, about education, is that you must be aware. You must be aware of your surroundings. That is why, of course, they talk about the 5 senses, you know, seeing, smelling, hearing, etc. All of that gives you an idea as to what is happening around you in your world, in your environment. And so that initiative will be one, or is one, that is designed to make certain that not only are you knowledgeable, but of the constraints that you would have in terms of time, because it is time specific. As I said, closing date for these applications will be on the 6th of next month. I don't know if it's going to be extended, but out of an abundance of caution, I think all parents who are in need of such assistance, having regard to all of the economic and commercial and job difficulties these days, certainly one could do with that kind of assistance for your children, your siblings, if you want to call that, or even if you're a surrogate mother or father. The fact is that here it is, you can take advantage of this, of course, but you have to have the knowledge, and therefore we will be too glad to assist in that regard. I am awaiting, of course, Mr. COP. I haven't gotten any indication from him, and the telephone seemed to be giving a little yeah. Let me see if I could get him now. Yes, indeed. I didn't communicate with him. I did not communicate with him today, so I don't know. But let me make certain, because I sent the link so that he can join us as convenient and as quickly as possible, because we have a bumper program, as I said. Somebody asked me today, whilst I'm waiting on him, somebody asked me today about whether or not we have done sufficiently as a society, not just to avoid what is occurring among our young people. Aye, yes, we are on, I'll send the link. Okay. All right, okay. Yeah, no problem. No problem. I am live saying no problem. Right, so people are expecting you. All right, okay. Yeah. Yes, indeed. So, right, so he will be on. You know, the technology is such that he could stay home, I could stay in the office here and still communicate and get to address the entire world, the entire globe. And that is what we just did. But that being as it may, I was asked the question today as to whether or not we as a society are satisfied. And more significantly, I think where the area of disappointment, the area of falling short, the area that requires of necessity remedial work, whether in that specific area we are either doing or have done sufficient to avoid the travails and the tragedy and the problems that we are having today. You see, it has to be addressed simply because we have had back-to-back SOEs. What does that mean? I mean, by now you would know that it means suspension of fundamental rights. Even though you may have a magnanimous government that says, listen, you can still assemble, etc. But it is clear that there's only certain things you can say. or do, as opposed to the non-existence of such curtailment of fundamental rights that even if you would have breached it, because of course all rights are limited. It is limited, for example, to the extent to which you do not infringe on other people's right. I cannot, for example, say what the hell I want about anybody and not be subjected if the offending party believes that he or she is so offended that he can take me to court on the whole question of defamation, and therefore impugning some kind of motive that is not, as far as the victim is concerned, in reality. Of course, there is no better evidence in the case of defamation than the truth. The truth will always set you free in these circumstances. But once it is not, or once there is an iota of let's say, untruth, or someone has been spreading some kind of rumor recklessly and with malicious intent, hoping that somehow the individual may not defend his or her name, and then they find themselves in all kinds of hot water when they would have been brought before the courts in a civil suit. So it is important that we start from that foundation. Because the fact of the matter is that there are persons who have been laboring in the vineyard. And in my case, for example, giving all of my adult life, with a few exceptions in between, for academic and other reasons. But the fact is that here am I, still. We had it under the NAR. And from since then, because since 1984, because of an experience that I would have encountered, and I believe up to today, simply because I'm a resident of Laventille and resides in Laventille at the time, nobody will believe that coming into a place like Parsley Street, Smith Lane in Laventille, that you will have a resident teacher living there, staying there. We have seen, of course, Marcel, who decided, well, listen, he got it made and therefore has migrated to another community and another status, of course. But like the typical absentee Laventillian will want to exploit the, should I say, the loyalty of the people of Laventille, and when I say Laventille, I'm talking about Laventille East, Laventille West, and Port-au-Prince South in particular, because that is where my party has focused, and that is where I believe the amelioration, the solution to our problem lies nationally. And I've said it over and over, and there is no, what I consider to be overstating, if I say it again, that no community in Trinidad and Tobago has been mentioned in advisories against Trinidad and Tobago from the metropolitan countries and the capital investment countries, if you want to call it that, on whom Trinidad and Tobago depend for its existence and its future advancement. No other community but Laventille, Eastport of Spain, Nelson Street, Belmont have been mentioned. And therefore, I find it very, not just discourteous, not just disingenuous, not just foolish and dotish. For anybody to say, well, what is special about Laventille and these communities that you have to pay special attention to? What about Labre? What about Point Fortin? What about Guayari? What about Toko, etc.? The fact is, and I cannot overemphasize, the fact is that these communities have not, no note has been taken in an advisory against Trinidad and Tobago than those that I have mentioned. And therefore, there is a critical requirement. There is an imperative of any government, past and present, to a focus in addressing. Otherwise, you will be simply be myopic. You will be short-sighted. You cannot know that a community is holding back opportunities for a country and not pay focus. And that is why I was particularly disturbed, and it attracted my disapprobation and pejorative sense of dismay and disgust and contempt, having regard to the fact that here it is, in such a circumstance, people would suggest that you treat these communities as any other community. And my disgust was, of course, recently expressed and manifested with the failure of the Parliament, and in this case, the opposition and independents in the Parliament, that did not cause the ZOSO bill, the Zone of Special Operations, to fail. It is abominable. It is a lost opportunity. You see, just in case you believe that I am talking out of whim and fancy, and because of my preference or bias for these communities, having, of course, worked here from time immemorial as far as I am concerned. The fact is that there was a part of the ZOSO bill that talked about and gave some kind of what I consider to be olive branch, really, to the communities like Laventille, which of course would have obviously been declared a ZOSO. Again, given credence, as is the case today. There hardly any young man on the streets out here, on Nelson Street, Duncan Street, George Street, hardly any one of them. All today, you'll hear them chatting, you'll hear them playing their music and so on in their own little way, and of course, huddling and having their own, what I consider to be typical Trini Lime, as young people do and would want to do. But that is not so, because almost all of them were picked up by the police in this special arrangement suspending people's rights, and are now, of course, incarcerated at various police stations or at the National Holding Bay, if you want to call it that, or prisons of the country. And that's the only reason why the streets are cleared. But the SOE must come to an end. And whether they like it or not, or whether you would have had a respite over the presence of the SOE, the fact of the matter is that whether it's bail for those who may eventually, the very few that will eventually be facing the criminal justice system ultimately for being a gang or something of that nature. The fact is that all of them, except, well, these days you can even get bail for murder as well. All of them will be back on the streets. Is it an exercise in futility? Is it one that would cause these young men who may or may not be engaged in criminal behavior, gang warfare, borderline issues, would that be a deterrent? Would there be a lesson that they would learn so critical, so crucial, that they would say, not me again, and they therefore not, or put another way, change their ways and conduct? We have to note that. And therefore, whether you say it is ephemeral, meaning temporary, whether you conclude that is an exercise in futility because they will be back on the streets, and whether the lessons that they would have learned would be one that would, on a sustained basis, preferably, they would change their ways. I am saying to you that because of what is unfolding as we speak in the public space and in connection with the SOE and the conduct of law enforcement, that is a very, very tall order. To expect a transformation of the type that will settle Trinidad and Tobago and put it on the path of peace, security, wealth creation, and optimum employment, and therefore contribution to the state called Trinidad and Tobago for its advancement. I'm saying that it is extremely difficult to comprehend or to fathom that that is part of the outcome. No one, including, I'm sure, the law enforcement agencies, whether it be that of joint patrols with the Army and other, what I consider members of the national security apparatus, I don't think they have any illusions that this will be a permanent fix. I don't think so. And therefore, as I have advocated and have always said, that it is upon the community where these young men and women would have derived from that a sustainable solution to this problem that have initiated several back-to-back SOEs depends and relies. I'm saying so again because in the conversation today, quite apart from what I consider to be the brainstorming that we would normally do every 2 or 3 days, as the case may be, to look at new developments and to look at new strategies and to evaluate what has to be done in the context of those initiatives that would have been successful. And today we talked about successful initiatives. We talked about the MLIO program, for example, that trained over 6,000 of the kind of young people who would have gravitated to potentially a life of crime and criminal behavior. And on the other hand, we look at other programs that are, comparatively speaking, been given handsome state support, whether it be Serval or whether it be Rondamingos, Living Waters, etc. And to make the comparison and to say that if it is that the state has a responsibility as clearly and as evident by the imposition of state of emergency, it means therefore that the state understands that it has a role to generate the peace and facilitate the proliferation of wealth, and to make certain that the people live a decent life in such a way that they can make their contribution not only to society but to themselves, their family, and their neighborhood. If the state understands that, then why is it so difficult to focus on areas that I am sure will be cost effective from where I stand, one, and two, has unlimited benefit, not just for the state or the party or the government in office, but to the entire society. Just imagine if we are able to address the problem of crime and criminality among our young people in the Laventils, of course, East Port of Spain, Belmont, Sealots, Beetham, etc. What a wonderful place Trinidad will eventually be. It is argued that there is a financial or economic benefit to some to keep the status quo as it is. But to me, it's an exercise in futility, or put another way, it is myopic to the extreme. That a government who has the responsibility of peace and security and facilitating the advancement of every individual institution and indeed the wider national interests and society, that you will engage in an activity that is not only counterproductive, not only myopic, not only a spit in the sky scenario where the entire thing crumbles upon you, because you would have provided the wrong prescriptions for addressing the problem, when in fact the solution to the problem is at your doorstep and within your grasp. I'm coming back to the discussion that I had today, you see, because there are individuals and institutions who are doing yeoman service without recognition, both in terms of financial support or indeed for the work that they would have been doing, the absence of which the situation would have been worse. Just imagine that. The situation in Trinidad and Tobago being worse. And I'm saying so against the background that if it is that you provide state support for Serval, Living Waters, etc., apart from their own creative ways of augmenting their operations, if you want to call it that, but I'm talking here from the perspective of the state, then if the state focuses on these individuals and or institutions, how come LOennox Smith has to make an intervention without state support? For years, for decades. How other individuals from within the bosom of the community where the problem originates, how come they are not supported? How come by your action, and I'm talking about the state, the government, how come those that you have identified and provide the resources to, how come they have not been able to solve the problem? Because your action suggested that they alone can solve the problem, and that is why they are getting state support. That's the only conclusion I can draw. I had the unfortunate, of course, I think it was on this program, where somebody said that the reason why MLIO or program like this is not getting the support because I said that if I get a chance, I will empty the treasury in Laventille. That couldn't be further from irrational assessment or analysis. Can't be further from that at all. Because in fact, it is an irrational analysis. No way the parliament representative of somewhat 41 constituencies will allow LOennox Smith to take the whole treasury and empty it in Laventille. No way. And they have their own issues and problems to be resolved. And at any rate, the principle is that there should be equity. But on the question of equity, I want to say this. Because you see, I have been approached on this matter before. I remember on one occasion, I criticized the then Ministry of Youth and Sports under a PNM, I believe, administration, when I said that you cannot talk about equitable distribution of resources when there is a clear case and need for focusing more in one area as opposed to another area. So the principle of equity is good. It's a good, let's say, psychological and maybe marvelous talking point on principle. But there is another principle attached to my position when I said that you cannot treat the Laventilles, for example, similar to, say, a community such as Guayari. I use that as the example. And I was speaking in the context of young people, and because I made an inquiry and I interrogated the supervisor at the time. I think he was a director of youth. But I told him, it is not fair. It is not fair for Laventille to be getting the same kind of treatment in terms of resource allocations as that of Guayari or some far-flung community in Trinidad and Tobago. And that is when the response came that they have to be equitable. So in other words, if you have 10 oranges and 10 communities, you have to give each community an orange. An orange, yes. That is what he said essentially. And I said, no. In the specific context of Laventil, East Port of Spain, Beetham, Sealets, and so on, this is a concrete jungle. Whereas the young man in Guayaguayari may be living in a true, what I consider to be greenery or forested area, but of course strewn, I'm sure, with agricultural opportunities that could feed him whether he likes it or not. But in the case of East Port of Spain, Laventil, etc., you can't eat the concrete. There is no farming, and if you want to, it will be so expensive, and not that I'm saying it is impossible, so expensive and so counterproductive, so futile, because you cannot in any serious way look at commercial farming in this concrete jungle scenario. No way. No way. However, land galore in Guayaguayari, Miaro, Toco, etc. And because we have an abundance of water, rainy season, of course, dry season, fertile soil, and a plethora of fruits and other edible items that are seasonal generally. Some are perennial, meaning that you grow it all year through. You will be able to survive in such an environment, because the basic thing is to eat. Don't talk for a shelter. In the urban environment, the urban concrete jungle environment, you had to wear some of the nicest pieces of clothes, outfits, to whether it be at home, whether it be just outside in the neighborhood, just walking into town if it is within walking distance, or paying transportation fare to get to Port of Spain and to wherever you are going within this concrete jungle environment. So even that is expensive. So what is the common denominator here that is required? There is an urgency and a need of an imperative nature for money. For money. And I'm talking money here not to give it away, not to be naive and don't understand the value of money, because by its very nature, money is supposed to be on principle scarce. So it's a scarce commodity. But you can get it by the provision of what? Of jobs, of work. But attached to that is the whole question of skills development and academic pursuit. And those who find themselves on top of the pile in terms of the skills that they would have acquired and the demand thereof, and of course consistent with that fundamental economic principle of supply and demand. It means those who are in or of greatest need or are in greatest need will be on top of the pile and can make certain decisions, as opposed to others who may be considered to be so prolific in terms of supply that demand will not be concomitant with those where the demand is high and the supply is scarce. But what is important is that here is where you get your administrators because of their proximity to the seat of power and the main thoroughfare and commercial center and political, let's say, edifice or political structure of the country. The parliament is right there. The Hall of Justice is right there. National Security, Police Headquarters right there. All of that, close proximity. And therefore, hospitals, etc. And therefore, most of the urban workers will naturally be what? Be sedentary workers. Well, are those who would have to give service in the hospital as doctors, nurses, clerical staff, janitors, wardsmen and women. I'm just using that as one example, as quite apart from the other institutions such as the police, such as that of fire service, such as that of the prisons, and we can go on and on. That is where your cadre, basically, of administrators to manage the affairs administratively of the country, because of the fact that they reside and they operate within the parameters of the concrete jungle I have just described. Obviously, that is not the case in the case of places like Grandi, Mayaro, Guayari, Labre, etc. They do not have the infrastructure, and where it exists is minuscule comparative to that of Port of Spain, where the central administration of the country is located, resides, and is administered. That is the reality. So it is very important that we understand that. But let me tell you, I don't know if people are trying to get in. The line is open. The line is open. COP has indicated that he'll be a bit late, a bit tardy, so I don't know. But the show has to go on. So I thought it was important, of course, to lay the foundation, because I want to get back to the fact that there are elements within human service from time immemorial. And I am saying, where I sit, this problem of young people engaging in the state to the extent to which you have back-to-back SOEs. I will go as far as to say is unnecessary. 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 Some may say, Smith, pie in the sky talk. Well, before you extrapolate and you give your nuanced counter argument, you will have to treat with what I have said earlier, first and foremost. Whether or not there is an imperative, there is a Hobson's choice of youths in urban communities that must have money to survive. They therefore must be provided with every opportunity to gain the skills and the capacity to take up the jobs that are usually associated with urban communities, and urban communities suggest that it is the administrative centers, whether sub or national, as is in the case of Port of Spain. You have to do that. And you have to also answer the question as to why it is that Serval and Living Waters and they are getting the resources support from the state. MLIO, none. And others like it, none. Even Archbishop Burke. I mean, in recent times, because of the particular project that she would have initiated, talking about the Baptist community, and that total and absolute injustice that was provided to the Shouter Baptist community, she was able, from a Shouter Baptist perspective, which is just one minute part of the overall problems, and those who are the perpetrators of those problems. That's just one minute part. So you cannot say that the state came in, because even in that scenario, you can conclude that the problem has not been solved. What is the problem? The problem of young people engaging in crime and criminality, gang warfare, borderline issues, and are prepared, of course, to do heinous acts that would send shivers down the ordinary person's spine. And has triggered, of course, back-to-back SOEs. That is what I'm talking about. And even where there would have been opportunities to solve the problem to some extent, at least to downgrade, to erode, to minimize. We see where politicians, parliamentarians have decided not so to do. Not that all of them, because the government did what it had to do by bringing the Zoso bill, but it's the opposition, incidentally, in whose constituencies the greatest, the most prolific, and the most monolithic places where the problems that would have triggered SOEs back to back would have derived, or the genesis of the problem resides. And why? That must be a question that every single citizen must grapple with. Why? But we'll come to that a little later. The fact of the matter is that when we look in the parliament to where this particular piece of legislation, and therefore the measures contained therein in terms of the rolling out, they rejected it, the opposition and the independent senators. You cannot blame the government in this regard, because ultimately there must be a coming together, a consensus, a majority. And the opposition and independent benches in both houses of parliament failed communities like these. You obviously will now ask the question, how come, LOennox, that you are so strident, that you are so insistent that the SOE would have not necessarily been the panacea? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it would have been a step in the right direction. This is what I'm saying. You see, because there's a section of the Zoso bill that makes it imperative, make it incumbent, to make it of necessity, make it of a Hobson's choice nature. They have no choice. The government must put in infrastructure. And infrastructure here doesn't necessarily mean physical, but it also includes that. But it also means in education. It means, of course, in social welfare intervention. Special attention would have been paid by the virtue of the implementation of the Zoso in communities such as these. That's the point I am making. And you know, if a ZOSO mechanism was triggered, I wish, of course, I expect nothing less because of the nature and the contribution to the negatives that is Trinidad and Tobago today. Before I go further, I want to say this. I remember having a meeting with a former late Prime Minister, Patrick Manning, and I sent him a letter, of course, asking to have a discussion with him. I had a delegation from MLIO, the Mobile Laventille Improvement Organization. But in my letter, I did indicate that if they had now come into office, I think was in 1991. Yes, 1991 when they came into office. In my letter, a very long letter, about maybe 4 or 5 pages, I said in no uncertain terms, and I underlined it for emphasis, that Laventille will be an active participant in any social upheaval in Trinidad and Tobago, as had been under, of course, his predecessor, the then ANR Robinson, who was head of the NAR, under whose I shouldn't say portfolio, but under whose tenure in office the 1990 coup came about. So I did send him that very early. So my delegation entered the office. That time the Prime Minister's office was on top of the Eric Williams Financial Complex, coming out of the 1990 coup, so 1990-1991, PNM in office. And the first thing he told me that I could never forget, it is so indelibly implanted that I could easily feel it occurred yesterday or just now. Because the first thing he told me, delegation is there. We have a lawyer, Noel John. I want to say to his family, belated as it is, of course, my condolences go out to him. In my view, a very patriotic individual to take up the task of joining us in, of course, developing the programs of MLIO. He served as chairman at the time. I served as a program coordinator at the time. Patrick Manning turned and said, I see this letter. You know, but I don't respond to letters like these because they are a bit, for want of a better term, can't express the exact words, so I'm going to paraphrase. It's like it is belligerent, like it's warlike, like it's toxic to him. Because I said in the letter that Laventille will be an active participant in any future upheaval in Trinidad and Tobago. And probably that touched a nerve, so he didn't like it. So he said to me, he said to us, in fact, don't make joke with politicians. Wise for some is a joke, for them is bread and butter. Let me repeat. Patrick Manning, as Prime Minister, having gotten into office in 1991, said to the delegation that I led as part of the MLIO initiative to meet with the various officials of government. He said, don't make joke with politicians. Why for some is a joke, for them is bread and butter. And immediately, and I don't know if it is by some kind of what I consider to be telepathy or something else, communicating not just with another human being, but with something opaque, not opaque, but innate, something object. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. Because here it is. When he said that, I said, but in my mind, So you concerned about your bread and butter, but what about the bread and butter of the people that we come here to represent? That is of no concern to you? In my mind, I did not say it to him, but in my mind, and my mental state moved from one of, optimism that something will happen, to one of utter and complete contempt. Yeah. Optimism to utter contempt. Because here it is, you are prime minister. And you are concerned with your bread and butter. We come there to concern ourselves with the bread and butter of the ordinary person in the Laventils, Beetham, Silats, East Port of Spain, etc. And you are concerned, you are telling me you have the highest executive office in the land, the most powerful office. The man, if he says this person could work, will work. If he said no money for you, you will get none. That is the kind of power that a prime minister wields. And here it is, he's telling me that don't make joke with politicians. Why for some is a joke, for them is bread and butter. And he probably felt that he was giving me some kind of advice, I suppose, because I took it eventually in that vein, in that context. Telling me, be very careful and be very gingerly in your maybe writings or communications. And I did write similar letters, but for different reasons, to other ministers of government, and I got under their skin as well. But the fact is that as prime minister, you ought not to tell a group of individuals coming out from Laventil, a constituency that you depend on for your survival. I remember, of course, the decimation in the 1986 elections at 33-3. And it was Laventil that brought you out, PNM. I hope Penny doesn't forget that. Because they seem to believe that somehow they take these communities or these constituencies for granted. The Laventils never betrayed, if you want to call it that, but I wouldn't say, if they divert away from the PNM, I wouldn't say that that is betrayal. I will say that that is about time and justifiable, having regard to the abuse, negligence, and the exploitation that these communities would have gotten from the PNM. Another day we will talk about why, from a community perspective, one had to rise to the level of political engagement in order to treat with a community like that. In other words, I will tell you the rationale behind the creation of the Laventil Outreach for Vertical Enrichment, that political party that is now a member of the coalition of interests with, of course, the UNC, and have gravitated thereto. I will, of necessity, have to explain, because I know that quite a lot of Laventilians and East Port of Spainians and Beethamanians and Silatsanians, etc., and Belmontanians and all of that are listening and are viewing, and will, of course, view this particular program sometime in the future, because it is online and to your convenience. But the fact is that here it is, his bread and butter he's concerned with, not that of the Laventils. Even though, of course, as I said, the party, PNM, depended on Laventil, and we have caused them, even to today, to still be a party vying for or in opposition, vying for government or in opposition, or should I say vying for opposition in perpetuity. That, of course, is my personal view and desire. But as a nation, we have to understand what we are dealing with. So let me get back to the whole question of the ZOSO. The ZOSO provided these communities with the best opportunity to call on the government legally and to seek judicial or other what I consider to be legal actions if they did not deliver, pulling, of course, the text of the legislation and the spirit of the legislation and the intent of the legislation to ameliorate and to assist these communities. As I said, education. Inside of that legislation, you would see piece of legislation, you would see that the state, having formed a particular committee of shakers and movers, including, of course, a representative of the police and that of national security and other ministries, including that of social development works, etc., and any other ministry that the committee deemed appropriate to co-opt in order to deliver services. And whether it is on the basis of utilities, whether it is drainage, whether it is housing, whether it is education, whether it is employment opportunities, yes, all of that is in that document. So in other words, to generate a transformation or a metamorphosis that would, at the end of the SOE experience or period, one can safely say that the possibility of a total transformation could have taken place with that piece of document that the opposition in the parliament and the independent senators so glibly dismissed, so glibly and so perfunctorily, as if it is something that is trivial. Yes, people. If it is for the first time you are getting, of course, that level of knowledge, then thank the corridor transformation for that. There's a need to understand that. But let me, of course, I love to demonstrate for you. I like to put into practice that which I speak. So therefore, I have to, of course, share with you the following. Because it is important that you understand, because if you have a community that recognizes its problems and decide to do something about it in the form of the political entity that I spoke of, or indeed the interventions by way of the creation of initiatives, programs for amelioration, then clearly it provides the basis and gives credence to the fact that it is upon the community the ultimate solution to the problems that are facing the community of Trinidad and Tobago, but these communities in particular, in order to address sustainably these problems. So it's important, of course, to do that.
So the treasury broke and they say that recession jamming. So foreign countries really start migrating. They lose faith in the country, they say we gone down the drain. They say no more could we see happy times again. But the will to recover in my people like have confidence. Although many may seem to feel that I talking nonsense, but the majority of we decide we're not going to run, because now is the time to show we patriotism. For we country facing its darkest hour, so our people need us today more than ever. But in our fight to recover, if ever you feel to surrender, it have one little thing that I want you always remember. We could make it if we try, just a little harder. If we just get one more try, life would be much sweeter.
Yes, indeed. That is what we are talking about. And that is just an excerpt. That is just an excerpt. There is more.
Shrouded. They don't smile and they never will. Only volunteers get the fill. Empty promises is what they hear. No running water from year to year. Hearts that no one desire. That if there is a Messiah, someday he hear their whispered prayer. Covered always bare and scanty. 10 people in a one-bedroom shanty. Forced to sell on the pavement. No vacancy, no employment. Kettle firecracker from gunshot. Blood does flow when things get hot. Afraid to look out the window to hear voices from the ghetto. Crying, hey, Lord, crying.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And that is just, as I say, an excerpt of what would have been done. That is track record. When you talk about the PM of Canada writing to a civic group in Laventille, when you see the British High Commission walk the streets of East Port of Spain, the Indian High Commission, what you think that was and is all about, and you're going to see it again. You're going to see it again. Because it is important that we understand something.
This song is specially dedicated to all my fellow Trinidadians. Trinidad has radiance, Trinidad is nice. When come to the heroes, we got to think twice. We got to learn how to bridge the gap, because there are people make us powerful on the map. The way we treat we heroes with scorn, and also wish they were never born. In other countries I realize their heroes are the ones whom they idolize. Jamaica buried the name of Marley to sing praise to their hero. But in my country we deliberately But shall we treat Noel so low? We ought to know we shouldn't treat a hero so. No, 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 no. We shouldn't treat a hero so. No, 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 no. We shouldn't treat a hero so. Bang, bang, ba ba da ba lang, bang, 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 being a rich country, that isn't all. My people convince me they're not patriotic at all. When they see their heroes, some they suck their teeth and depreciate them all along the streets. Spree Simon died in poverty, yet he never had a state funeral for him. Although he was founder upon, yet my nation didn't show appreciation. Stevie Wonder to demonstrator for the late Martin Luther, and Jubal Butler he fought for labor. We watch him die the pauper.
Yes, indeed. Let us be real. Let us not lose the opportunity that ordinary people provide. Not being well off, but have hearts, have intent, ideas, and in spite, or probably because of the challenges, they are able to deliver. And I'm saying that the time has come for the society to recognize that there are simple heroes in these various communities. I think the last victim of that effort would have been God Christopher. I cannot overemphasize because it has a nexus and therefore connotation as to the devious, the inhumane, the dangerous, the toxic nature of the PNM, and how they would abuse those on whom they depend to be in office even to today. Because you see, God Christopher was the latest in the expulsion, extinction of community initiatives. Just as Lystra Penny and of course her street children's program, where's that today? Just as Archbishop Barbara Gray Burke and her children's home, where's that today? And just as MLIO, while of course we have been able to adapt, adjust, and now morphed into what I consider to be a program writing, generating, and evaluation entity with some classroom education facilitation. Of course, I'll leave that now to Joshua. He will deal with that aspect of it. But the fact of the matter is that these people have been abused. They have been neglected. They have been cast aside. And most of them still exist with all that experience and knowledge and know-how. And you don't understand a state that you have to seek them out. It's not for them to seek you out. They have done that over and over and have been disappointed. So what they would have done and conclude, and rightfully so, is that to say, since that is your problem and I have taken on the responsibility within and without the community, and you still continue to be recalcitrant and be disrespectful and be unjust, then you do it. You do it. And today, back-to-back SOEs. Today, back-to-back SOEs. That is what the consequences of that level of neglect, because one expects that if you have taken on a task that is rightfully the state particularly in crucial areas of human behavior and young people proclivity or tendency to gravitate to a life of crime and criminality, gang warfare, borderline issues, and all of the other negativities that have created, for example, the whole question of home invasion. Murders notwithstanding, the use and the seeking of arms and ammunition to do harm, to maim, to kill, to disfigure, and most importantly, in my view, you could say I am biased, you could say I am materialistic, but to sully our international image so that all of us, whether we worked assiduously, whether we worked religiously, whether we worked as patriots, the fact is that that kind of image, international image, would have sullied and wipe away and expunge and, of course, deteriorate all of that which a patriotic Trinbagonian would have worked for, being a proud member of the civilization or the citizenry called Trinidad and Tobago. Let us not waste time. We have wasted too much time. The present government is in office a year and 2 months. I say to them that they have a duty to recruit persons like these, seek their knowledge, seek their ideas, because clearly only with a draconian, a sledgehammer, a type approach, the police is able to get a handle on this situation. But the sledgehammer, the handle itself, because it is made of timber, wood, will not be there for long, particularly if it is infested with termite. But the people of whom I speak, because they are of the community, by the community, for the community, and exist in the community, it certainly is a staple, is an indelible, it is a irremovable element and component of these communities. And it is a good thing that we have programs like these, the corridor transformation and the access there too, because this is being sponsored by yours truly and those dedicated Lavantillians and persons abroad, etc. And I want, of course, at this stage to ask once again, and we thank those who would have made communications and inquiries already, that we have young people in these communities that are graduating from their secondary school system. I'm not too concerned now about the primary, because the secondary system means that they would have terminated their years in school, so to speak, or in a school environment, most of them. Of course, there is a 5 or 10% of them that will be repeating or going on to university, as the case may be. But the vast majority, some 13,000, I understand. Today, I believe it was, I saw a figure of 18,000. But 18,000 in the context of entering the primary system, entering the secondary system, coming out from the primary system. So 18,000. So I have always said that I am a bit conservative when I say 13,000 leave the secondary system every year around July. So that figure, which I have no doubt, because it was part and parcel of the advertising, that on the 6th of next month, from tomorrow, next month, July 6th, the C results will be available online. And they said it's 18,000 young people. So if 18 went in, one expects that 18 will come out. But of course, during the course of their program, that 5 year, some leave, some, of course, go on to other things. And therefore you end up with just about 13,000, 14,000. But that number that is yet to be identified to make up that 18,000, one has to be concerned. Because if they leave school prematurely, then the likelihood that they are engaged in crime and criminality, gang warfare, etc., is real. It's real. And once again, I cannot overemphasize as I close, because it's clear that COP will not be able to join us. But I want to tell you, write your parliamentary representative. It doesn't matter whether you are from Laventille, as the case may be, but you have a national duty to tell them there are people inside of these communities that are unsung heroes, and that those hairy-fairy, those epiphanies, those eureka moments, that a new government and persons who would have had no history, no connectivity to programs like these, and to addressing, of course, the question of young people and their challenges and their gravitation to the negative elements that cause not only back-to-back SOEs, but also advisories against Trinidad and Tobago from the metropolitan countries. You tell them. You have to tell them. I know of a minister, I'm not going to call any name, so he's a present minister, who said, Mr. Smith, members of my family attended MLIO, so I know of it. But yet still, 1 year hence, 1 year hence, no call. No call to say, Mr. Smith, I know that you have been there. I know that you know, and therefore, we need your services now. 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 Write to them. Tell them that none in Trinidad and Tobago can do this. None in Trinidad and Tobago have done this. I can give you numerous and unlimited stories about some of the experiences. And all I'm saying, invite them to give Trinidad and Tobago the best chance of is on a sustained basis to treat with this burgeoning youth crime, criminality, gang warfare, borderline issue matter. Because it can only augur well and beneficial to the society by exploring or exploiting all that is required. Since SOE clearly will not, let me repeat, will not solve the problem. We have been there. But they're back to back. It's going to come to an end, and these young men will be back on the streets. What do you do? And whilst I understand the plight of the law enforcement and their challenges and the fact that they may have tried, but the fact is that there is a built-in distrust between the communities that are supposed to monitor and maintain and generate the sustainable reduction in crime and criminality, gang warfare, etc. There is a built-in mistrust. And the police must know that and tell the National Security Council, whosoever In fact, I'm going to tell you this as I close. I was invited to address the National Security Council long before any one of those ministers that are now in government. I was in the Senate as well on the invitation of Mr. Pandey, former Prime Minister. Yes. So I know why the delay. The quicker we get working to solve this problem, because you must know by now that I have done my part. You must know by what I'm saying that I've done my part. If I could treat Manning in the way that I did, or put another way, if I cause him to treat me the way he did, you must know that I did my part, and now that I'm part and parcel of the present government, you must know that. But there are certain that it is the UNC and the present arrangement the only savior for Trinidad and Tobago moving forward. The PNM cannot comprehend what I've just said, because they have repeatedly been part of the problem and is in fact a significant part of the problems that Trinidad and Tobago faces here. Our international image, our regional image, our development as a nation economically, socially, psychologically. And therefore, that must be jettisoned, the PNM I'm talking about, and be relegated to the dustbin of political history in this country. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. See you tomorrow night. I hope that COP will be with me tomorrow. All things being equal. Let me say, of course, don't forget, contact my assistant. Well, you can call me even after the program, 337-6940. The number is screening across the screen. It's streaming across the screen. You can call Annie as well, and she will be able to accommodate you in terms of how we can agree to have you play your part, whether financially, materially, or you want to, let's say, assist directly a student. So her number is 336-6594, 336-6594. See you tomorrow morning on the ground report. Andy and myself on 91.1 Talk City. Don't forget, you will not get the morning program, the ground report, either on the corridor transformation or on Real Media TT. We have discontinued that, and we will continue, of course, with the nightly program in the case of the corridor transformation. But in the case of Real Media TT, Andy will be having some what I consider to be special programs that will be absorbed by the Real Media TT. But from tomorrow, no other platform you will get the ground report on, except that of Talk City. So key in or link to Talk City, subscribe, and you will be accommodated there as far as the most talked about, most desired, most popular morning program from 6 to 9 in the morning, the ground report. Andy and myself, and of course Director Snipes, as we deal with these and other issues practically, frontally, and without fear of contradiction, because the intention and the will is always to advance Trinidad and Tobago. Once again, have a wonderful one. God bless, and see you tomorrow night. Yes, indeed. So let me just end with how we started. I think it is important that we be always conscious of the realities that is Trinidad and Tobago, and always be upfront and sincere with the efforts that are to be made. I just want to make sure that I want to get Black Stalin, and we can make it if we try. So just bear with me, just bear with me, just bear with me. Yes, indeed. Got it. Yes, I got it right. Okay. So here we go.
So the treasury broke and they say that recession jamming. So foreign countries really start migrating. They lose faith in the country, they say we gone down the drain. They say no more could we see happy times again. But the will to recover in my people like have confidence. Although many may seem to feel that I talk it nonsense. But the majority of we decide we're not going to run, because now is the time to show we patriotism. For we country facing is that is sour. So our people need us today more than ever. But in our fight to recover, if ever you feel to surrender, it have one little thing that I want you always remember. We could